How's everyone doing? Great. You sound really enthusiastic, so that's fantastic. It's because we're talking about everyone's favorite subject at the moment, which is decluttering, minimalism, getting rid of stuff. Or as I put on the screen, creation, care, living lighter. Can you just raise a hand if you have heard of Marie Kondo? If you maybe have seen the show on Netflix or read the book. If you have, in the last year, have you taken anything to a thrift store? Yeah. Have you thrown anything away? Has anyone not thrown anything away in the last year? There's always one. And a lot of us do it, don't we? We get in this thing of, we find we've got too much stuff and it becomes a burden, and then we decide we're going to declutter. Many people have garage sales, and that just seems to be a time when you can get rid of loads of clutter. Those are very dangerous for those people not having garage sales, because then they just go and buy other people's clutter. And stuff is a problem, isn't it? Stuff is a problem. Anyone downsized their house in the last few years? And if you try and get rid of stuff that's been accumulated, often over a lifetime, then what do you do with it? And what a lot of people do is they put it in one of these storage containers. Has anyone done that? And storage container is like a lot of other things in life where you can have the first month free. And so you go, oh, it's great, it's free. And then as the invoices come in month by month, or the pad comes out, the direct takeout from your bank, you realize that stuff is costing you money. And so, really, I want to be quite practical today. And to get to the point of being practical, I want to jump back to the gospel that we just heard, which speaks of where we're to put our treasure. You probably know the answer, but if not, it's verse 21. Where do we put our treasure? Where should we put our treasure? Okay, in the Bibles, the clue's in verse 21. Classic teacher trick. What did you hear the person say? It's verse 21 of Matthew 6. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Or where your heart is, there your treasure is. I've not got it in front of me because it's over there. Have a look and look at it. If you want, you can even read down in the text and see the bit that's coming next, which I'll also refer to. Where we put our treasure it matters. And I think for many of us, we end up putting our treasure in things. We treasure our things, don't we? We have possessions. For me, I really thought about this when we moved to Canada, because the guy from the moving company came round, because we initially had a quote to move all of our stuff. And he said this line, and it was just, wow. But it goes like this. He said, the question you need to ask yourself, if you're shipping all your possessions in a container, is if the boat sinks or your container falls off and it ends up at the bottom of the sea, what are the things that you would really miss? Those are the things to take on the plane with you. It's like, wow. That was really significant for me in thinking about, well, if we send all this stuff, we could lose it all. It's probably not likely to happen, the way that, but it really brought it home. That what were the things that really mattered? And for us, that triggered a process that meant we ended up not shipping anything, because most of what we had wasn't actually, we wouldn't mind not having, and there were some things we'd need that were new, but you can't bring them into Canada anyway, or they were too big. So we traveled with 9 suitcases, a guitar, and some bicycles. Maybe it was 8 cases, and anyway. It was quite an interesting experience at check-in at Heathrow when we moved here. And some of you have heard the story, because the weight limit was 23 kilograms per case, or we'd be charged more. So it involved this process of I've got one of those scales, you know, the ones you buy from the dollar store to weigh your luggage? Yeah, they're quite good if you're trying to weigh a certain amount, but when you get to that point, they're not very good. So the accuracy wasn't there. So it was this thing of, never have I prayed so much in my life. I'm there praying that the thing will be 22.91, and it ends up being 23.7 or something. And anyway, so we were shifting stuff from case to case. So it gets me thinking, when you go on vacation, what do you take with you? Typically, you'll take your favorite things. And what do you leave behind? What is it that we treasure? Now, if you read a few verses down into Matthew, what you will see is it talks about, and we didn't have it read because it's quite long, but it talks about the flowers in the fields. They don't have to worry, do they, about what they're going to wear. If they're a daisy, they're going to be white and yellow. If they're, you know what flowers look like. And so they don't worry about what to wear. God clothes them, is what Matthew says later on in chapter 6. And yet for us, we kind of trust God to a point, I want to suggest, but then actually we also don't. We kind of trust God to a point, but then also we don't. What do I mean? We like to hedge our bets. We like to make sure that we have stuff in stock. There's a scarcity mindset, isn't there, that we all live in. A lot of it came from, I think, the Second World War, which is when supplies weren't as plentiful, and so we often hold on to as many things as we can. Do you know anyone like that? If we're mean, we call them hoarders. If we're generous, we might use another way of saying it, but all of us do it to a point. We like to get things. When something is free, especially, there's food I will never eat on the ground, but get me on an airplane when it's free. I never eat cheese and crackers, ever, except on a plane, when it's, this size, in a tiny packet, and it's the most exciting thing ever that somebody's handing me some cheese and crackers I don't even normally eat. But it's this scarcity thing of, well, I might not get another meal. I don't know what's coming. There might not be any breakfast. And so I think that scarcity mindset plays into our need to accumulate stuff. We accumulate stuff. And yet that contrasts with what the Bible says about, which is everything's going to be destroyed by moths. Picture them. It would have been a great video, wouldn't it? Everything being destroyed by moths. That's what it says later on in Matthew. So we end up in this place of going, well, what do we do with this? Because all the time we're bombarded by messages trying to sell us more stuff. All the time we're bombarded by messages trying to sell us more stuff, and it's really hard not to succumb to them. All of us have our favorite things, don't we? Mine are running shoes. I have so many running shoes that I ended up needing to put, those closet-made wire shelf things? Well, when we got our house, it had one of them. And then I realized that wasn't enough. It could only take about 8 pairs of shoes. So I put a second one up, which I could still just about reach. Suffice to say, there are now 4 shelves, and I can't go any higher. And there's potentially, I had one for like flip-flops and pool slides. I can maybe squeeze that in at the top. So I've got all these things for running shoes, and I'll go and buy them because I get them on sale or something. That's it, isn't it? I get them on sale. There's a store called Selfridges. It's founded in London, but by an American. And there was a Selfridges in Birmingham where I used to live. And I used to walk through Selfridges, and everything was typically really expensive there. But there was a coffee shop in the middle of it that was became a Starbucks. And so I'd go to Starbucks and Selfridges because there were less people in there than the other Starbucks. So that was and as I walked through, when it was sort of January and the sales were on, there would be these massive signs. You've seen them, and they're trying to get you to buy things. And the ones in Selfridges, they were very blunt. They just said, "Buy me, I'll change your life." And we know that's what marketers want to say all the time, that every product we buy is going to be life-changing and life-giving, which is a lie. But they had the audacity to just put that on the signs, and there were these signs everywhere, "Buy me and I'll change your life," was what they had for the sales. And these are the messages that we're being bombarded with all the time. So on the one hand, we have this thing about not storing up treasure, about God will provide, about trust in me. That's what we see in Matthew 6. And yet the world is saying, but you need more things. It will change your life. It will make your life better. Why shouldn't you have 6 different coats and 8 different of these? And so I believe that it's because of this scarcity mindset that we have that we think, okay, I do need these things. And yet, the challenge for us is that God says, no, you don't. Trust in me. And the question for you to talk about over coffee is, so how do we balance the two? I don't have the answer. If I did, I wouldn't have had to buy extra shelves for my running shoes. So I stand here as one who is broken and fallen and hasn't got this stuff together myself. But what I do know is that decluttering and getting rid of stuff doesn't work unless we go back to the cause. So Marie Kondo, I read her book a while ago. It's called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And broadly, what she says in this book is, if you get rid of most of what you have, then it will be quite easy to organize it, what's left. So you could pay $20, or you could just do that. That's pretty much all she says. Get rid of everything, only have a few things left. And that is her concept. It's, you know when you've got enough clothes because your closet will not be overfull. That's what she says. It makes sense. But so how do we tie that into our spirituality? And how do we make an impact on the world? One time I was flying from Vancouver to London before we used to come here on vacation. So we were flying back with an airline I won't name. I named it at the 9 o'clock because it's not recorded, but I don't want to be sued, so I'm not naming the airline. But you can probably guess the one. And we got back to Heathrow, and they didn't have any crew to take the bags off the plane, so we sat there for 2 hours waiting for our bags. And this was quite annoying. You know, it's a 9.5-hour flight overnight anyway. We were quite fed up. And so I started researching, as you would having had this kind of experience, well, could I travel with just hand baggage only? And I came across this website called onebag.com, and I think it's by a Canadian guy. There are many sites and websites and blogs, and people spend, the internet is just full of hours and days worth of time that's gone into researching how to travel with less stuff. But most of them, what they're about is, how do you cram more in? How do you get a more efficient suitcase to put more things in? This guy's concept was, it's not about how much you can squeeze in, but it's about how little do you need. It's not about how much you could carry, it's about how little do you need? How little can you get away with? And he'd got some practical tips. One of them I followed. You know, if any of you shave, men, shaving foam, this isn't shaving foam, but it's normally that size. And he said you can get these little things of shaving oil, and if you use that, it's obviously a lot smaller. So I tried this for travel, and then I thought, well, if I can do that when I travel, what if I could do that all the time? And it got me thinking, what other things in life do we end up with these ginormous packages? And because I love transport, as you know, I start to extrapolate and say, well, imagine how many of these can fit in a truck versus how many of these can fit in a truck. And so you end up saying, if the whole world changed from using shaving foam to shaving oil, for example, and I know what some of you are thinking, just use an electric one, it's easier. Okay, I'll just say that. But do you see how many trucks would be shaved? How many trucks would be saved on our roads? And if you drive along certain roads and you sit behind these trucks, they really have an impact. They have an impact because they slow us down. They have an impact because they're polluting the environment. We need the stuff that's in them. But what if we could do it smaller? And what if in every single area of our life we could go, how small can we make this? The classic one is packaging, isn't it? And here's the thing, as we think each week, I love that, has beautifully arranged. Last week I said it was a cloud. This week it looks like it's the beginnings of a tree, which is amazing. We've got a tree on the wall of commitments, and these are little things that people are saying, here is something I can do that's really small to help care for creation. Maybe your small thing would be to take on the manufacturer of your favorite product that is over-packaged. You know the things I mean, where you end up buying a tiny item, but because it won't have any shelf space and therefore no one will see it and no one will buy it, they put it in a ginormous box. And what a waste. Now, they might say, well, the box can be recycled, but that box has still had to be shipped in a container or on a truck, and it's polluting the environment. So really what I'm advocating for as I speak of living lighter is not just, let's use a slightly smaller product, or let's get rid of a few things, like Marie Kondo says. What I'm saying is we need to have a mindset shift. A mindset shift that says, how can we live as light as possible? How can we reduce our impact? It's no good for us to say, no, it doesn't matter. It's someone else's problem. It's no good for us to say, well, it's no, my kids can sort that out, or my grandkids. They can deal with climate problems in 20 or 30 years' time. We have to start changing the structures today that will have the impact. And as I've said before, and I will keep saying, this kind of stuff saves money. If you're in the business of producing something that has to be shipped, and you can half the size of your product, you half your shipping costs. So there's a financial incentive. And so I really want to put the bug in your ear to send an email or fill in a comments form or write a letter to a company who you think could do that better. Because we have to use the voice that God's given us. And we can have an impact. We really can. Or maybe you start small and you talk to your local store, wherever you buy something from, and say, look, why are you wasting all this packaging? What happens when you live lighter? For those of you who have downsized, those of you who have decluttered, how does it feel when you take a load of stuff to the thrift store? Talk to each other for 2 minutes if you've done it. How does it feel when you get rid of stuff? Okay, that's long enough. Shout out some words. That was 1 minute. How does it feel? Great. Anything else other than great? Organized, wonderful. Lightning. Yeah, less of a burden. Yeah. Relief that you can find things. And sometimes it can be really hard. The sorting process can be really hard. The Marie Kondo method is you basically get everything out and put it so you can see it. And if you've done that when you've organized yourself, it is wow. Didn't realize I had that many pairs of shoes. I think I've got 20 pairs of running shoes. I managed to sell 3 of them recently on eBay, actually. So that's good. But I've now got 17, but that was also space for 3 more. As I said, we all have our things, and I'm not perfect. But it can sometimes be hard, the process. But afterwards, a bit like when I go for a run. I don't really like running, but afterwards I always feel good, and I'm glad I did. And I want to suggest that the stuff that surrounds us, kind of, it weighs on our mind. It weighs on our mind. The big picture sense, it's the storage containers that we're paying the bill for each month, and many people do. It's one of the fastest growing industries, actually, in the developed world is storage. Did you know that? Storage containers, either the shipping containers piled on top of all these big warehouses, it's one of the fastest growing industries as we try and work out what we do with our stuff. And I think the real challenge is that we have to change our mindsets. We've got to change our mindsets because, as I just indicated in a humorous way, but yet it's true, I think we all do this, I know I do, if I make space for something because I've got rid of some things, then I go, great, I can buy something new now to replace it. We have to change our mindsets. I have to change my mindset to say, I don't really need that many of those things. I could do with less. I'm going to stick with having the space. I'm not going to rush out and fill it again. I'm going to say no. Because unless we begin to change what we do, we're going to keep having this impact on the planet. So I wonder, as we finish, I wonder what it is for you, where you could, what sparks the interest in you. Maybe it's in, if you haven't done it, in doing some decluttering. I believe that the body, the mind, the spirit, the physical is connected. And so when we have a load of stuff, it will weigh us down and it will affect us in our spirit too. And so that's why I'm talking about this in church. But I also believe that unless we change the mindset that we have to trust more in God, we're going to keep doing this. We have to focus on Him and say, I'm going to trust that you're going to provide. Instead of this business of saying, well, yeah, I trust you're going to provide, Lord, but I'm just going to keep some spare things in case you turn out not to be real. Because I think that's what we do, if I'm honest. I do it too. I'm completely trusting you, Lord, but I'm going to keep some money in savings in case you don't exist and I need it. And God says, trust me. Trust me. And that is what that Matthew reading is all about. It's about trust. So the more we learn to trust in God, the less we will need to trust in things. The less we will need to respond to the signs that say, buy me and I'll change your life. Because typically most things you buy, they don't change your life. They just is another thing to carry, another thing to clean, another thing to tidy away.